All right, we're back with an episode that is going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to talk with this guy and get into some stuff that I think a lot of people would be interested in hearing, to be honest with you. But first, I want to thank the sponsors. Head over to www.johnbartoloshow.com and check out all the list of sponsors there. There's some awesome ones that I forget to mention sometimes, like Henry Rifles, Love Lever Action Rifles. Anybody who knows me knows those are like, you know, kind of my favorite thing right now. And check out Blackwater Ammunition. They're doing some awesome stuff, and they actually have ammo in stock. So that's a big deal right now if you happen to have ammo in stock. But I want to give a special thanks to Amp Smart. They're giving away a home security system right now. So if you're looking for a home security system, which everybody should be right now, head over and check them out. I put the links down below, but it's Amp Smart. It's about a $250 value that they give you free. So go check them out. It's part of the show only. It's not something they do all the time. So go check them out. This guest is going to be interesting because there's a lot of topics I want to kind of talk to him about. I want to get into it. We have Greg Wong. What's going on, brother?
Not much. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. So you are a tech advisor, gamer. You list a bunch of stuff. You might be the guy with the dream job I've been searching for. Let's get into your story a little bit and how you ended up in all this shit.
Oh man, yeah, it's kind of a long story.
We got time.
Yeah. So what's interesting is that so before I was in high school, I kind of got into this hobby called airsoft, which is basically like military simulation. It's like playing Call of Duty and Battlefield for real. And it kind of happened right around when the Call of Duty Modern Warfare first came out. So there was a big explosion of people like kind of getting into gaming and getting into like basically these action sports and stuff. And around the same time, I also joined the military too. So I did the military thing for about 6 years, 82nd Airborne Division, 112 Signal Battalion, and 78 Signal Battalion. And then got out, and through that time, I was still playing on and off. I got stationed in Japan for a while, so I played there because that's actually where the sport came from. And so all of that kind of culminated, and I was doing gaming a lot during that period too. And I actually got to play Battlefield for the United States. And when I was stationed at Fort Bragg the second time, I got flown to Europe for. They basically did a big unveiling. It was the Battlefield 4 Showdown or whatever. And it was basically all these European YouTubers versus all these American YouTubers. And somehow I just got randomly picked because I guess some guy dropped out. So they picked me, and I was like, I put in my, I was basically leave. And so I got to go to Europe and play. So that's kind of how I got into the gaming thing. And then once I got out, I moved to LA. And then that's when all the pieces of the puzzle kind of really started to come together because I had the military experience. I was also I played a lot of games, and I'd worked with a bunch of companies by that point. And then obviously I did like the airsoft side. So when it came to, because like a lot of people, they'll come into that world, but they only know one piece. Like you could be a tech advisor, but you've never played the game. So you don't kind of understand why there's compromises made or why the game developers or writers of a film or TV show might tweak some things. Or you might be basically that'd be kind of the gist of it if you were coming in as a military tech advisor, but you don't know where to get the props from and stuff, right? So since I kind of did all those things, I was basically able to be like, okay, so say we're working on this game. So I already know what the game is because like I've played it before. So I kind of understand the vibe, the feel, how things like will be changed for gameplay and whatnot. But I understand the military side. And then when we do all the reference stuff, I know where to get all the gear, all the replica and real gear for when we do all like the reference photo shoots and stuff like that, or for filming a commercial. Like that was the big one. Like when I did the Ghost Recon commercial, I fixed a lot of stuff, both how the gear is configured and also helping them find stuff because they didn't know where to get a lot of like replica prop weapons. Because a lot of times now productions are using airsoft or dummy guns and stuff. Because CG has gotten so good, a lot of productions won't use full-on blanks, or they'll use like partial blanks or whatnot, or they'll just straight up use airsoft guns. So that's kind of how I got into it, and I kind of became a jack of all trades because I was involved with like the gun world and the milsim side and kind of all the other things that kind of melded together really nice.
You know, it's wild because I have such a wide range of guests on, but I've looked forward to having you on for a while. And it's interesting to hear, when you have somebody with such a diverse background. And first off, thank you for your service. I mean, I think, one of the misconceptions is that, service members don't do milsim or sometimes that's not like hardcore enough, you know what I mean? And I think, it's refreshing to hear from a guy that's had his hand in so many different things. Now, you kind of might have the dream job, right? Like it's super. Can you make any money doing it? I mean, are you making money?
Yeah. I mean, LA, it's like, you're just bumping from gig to gig, whether tech consulting jobs, and a background job here. And then there's so many projects going on. And the more of them I do, that I kind of start slowly climbing up the ladder. Cause in LA, and just like with any industry, but especially in LA, it's kind of about who you know. And
right.
I got pretty good at it, just within the gun industry. So it kind of extended itself into the film and TV industry. And like for the Ubisoft thing, I knew one of the main authenticity advisors at Red Storm, who works on like Ghost Recon and all the Tom Clancy games. And he was the one that got me roped in and working on the Ghost Recon commercial. And then technically I did do the Division 2 CG commercial. They just had me advise on like some of their mocap. And it was funny because the principal actor that they picked for that mocap session was a friend of mine. So I saw the call sheet and I was like, dude, are you going to be at this thing? And he's like, dude, I totally am. So no, it's very, it's just interesting how you get roped into those things, but you can make a lot of money. It's a lot of fun. And it just depends on the scale of the project and everything from just like consulting on just weapons and gear, or if you're consulting on like movement and firearms and tactics and stuff, there's a lot of money there. And a lot of the guys who were doing it, they're getting older. So there's kind of a newer, younger generation of like dudes from the military or dudes from the gun community kind of coming in and filling those gaps. I mean, there's some really famous tech advisors like Dale Dye, Harry Humphreys, guys like that who've been working with like Michael Bay and other big actors for a while. They're getting kind of old. But I mean, they've made some amazing stuff. So it's just natural progression is that younger guys are going to come in. And I think probably one of the more successful of the younger tech advisor group, probably like Tyler Gray. He's a Delta Force guy. He did a bunch of different things, and now he's a writer, producer, actor, and director on SEAL Team.
Yeah, I had
on the TV show.
Yeah, I had Melnick on.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So, it's wild, man, because, I search high and low for, guys, associated with the industry. And when I found you, it was really interesting because you melded a few different worlds. And I thought that was so cool. And I was like, here's a dude who's out there, doing it in the firearms industry and the defense industry and the space. And he's doing something that not everybody does. I think, for a long time, people didn't, that's almost like a dream job, right? Like I said before, it's almost like people don't even imagine, that they could work on something like that, or they could be a part of something, larger. And you did it, man. And I think it's amazing to be a part of some of these projects and some of these things that you are. And I know that there's some you can talk about, some you can't, and I get all that. But to be a part of them, I was talking to Melnick about this, when you're going through and you're choosing, products and things to be in, how much of it is, and I'm just curious, none of these are hit questions, there's no right answer. How much of it is influenced by money and product placement, or is it just gear that you like? I know it all has to fit, right? And we'll get into that, but, how does that go?
So are you referring to like when I do like gear reviews and stuff, or when it comes to like specifically choosing like film projects and stuff like that, or a little both?
Both. I mean, how do you go through the process of putting something in a video game or putting it in a movie? Is it just about, is it the right piece of gear, or does a company say, hey, we'll give you $1 million, towards the script?
Okay. So it kind of depends. Sometimes, like, depending on the budget, people will be like, hey, we'll give you X amount of money to help fund the production. You just got to put this in there, and they have stipulations and whatnot, or licensing agreements. Like, for example, like Ubisoft has, basically video game companies, like some video game companies don't care and some video game companies do. And, some of them go through the process of getting permission to show off certain things. So there might not necessarily be money involved. Maybe there is. But I mean, for example, like one of the more obvious ones is 511 is like plastered all over Ghost Recon. So there's obviously some kind of like business arrangement there.
Of course.
But for film, I think one thing that was kind of cool, like sometimes things just sneak in. Sometimes it's like they're writing the story and they're like, hey, we need dudes from, we need dudes dressed up in 2005 Iraq SEAL gear. So like that's like specific. So like, and, sometimes it's based around the story, and usually when you're doing a creative process, it's based around the story first, and then it kind of branches off from there. But then occasionally, then some kind of outside source will be like, "Hey, we'll give you money if you put this in there or whatever." And that just depends how much creative freedom you have. Like if you're doing like Marvel or something, then there's tons of creative freedom there. If you're doing like a historical piece, maybe not so much. So. That kind of, it's always kind of situation dictates and situation determines. But I think one of the cooler things that I'd come across is on the first movie I worked on was Bright on Netflix. And I was just a background guy. And one of the other tech advisors who'd worked with David Ayer on everything like Fury, he'd worked on End of Watch. He's basically like David Ayer's like right-hand man, like Suicide Squad. He's done everything. Kevin Vance, one of Tyler Gray's buddies. He was like, hey, we need some military guys to come out and do this movie. And I was like, oh, snap. So I went out there for, I think it was like a week. And on the weapons that we got from, he's a really famous Asian guy. He's an armor in the industry. They got BCM rifles, and they had the B.E. Myers Maul on it. I don't know if you know what the Maul is. Yeah. Basically, it's like this modular weapons laser. It's like basically a bit like a little Death Star because it's got a bunch of tiny lasers clustered together. But anyhow, I didn't even know what it was. That's how new it was. Like there wasn't a lot of press about it in the industry. It was super new. ISS had just gotten it for props, and then that was like the first movie it was in. And I thought it was hilarious because here I am, like I've seen all kinds of stuff in the gun industry. I'm like, I have never seen this before. What the heck is this? Did they make this for the movie? But I was like, it's too well made to be just made for the movie. Like this is like a legit like weapon laser. And kind of serendipitous, the company that I work for now actually has the license from B.E. Myers to make the replica Maul. So we're going to be making them. So it's kind of funny how that kind of turned out. But yeah, so like cool little stuff like that will end up popping in a movie if it was needed, or if someone thought it was cool, or director direction, basically, if he wants to create a certain look.
Yeah, it's, there's a lot that goes into getting it right. And if you can, give the listener some insight, like as to how you maybe pick and choose some of the props that are in there. If you touched on it when you brought up if it's a period thing, timeline, everything. But if you're starting a project, what are the right questions you ask, and how do you go about selecting the gear? Or is it just like they're like, hey, we want a bunch of how good are the studios getting at asking the right questions is what I'm getting at, Greg?
You're getting better. It's interesting because I also know the people at Eastern Costumes, which is one of the biggest military prop houses. I did a couple of days over there and helped them out because they needed some guy, because their main tech guy had left to go work on 68 whiskey. But so I can help those guys out. So it's interesting. Like they get calls from productions and stuff, and so basically it's like wardrobe people calling them, or like stuff like the director's like, hey, we want to do this period piece, or I don't know, like Rangers in 2010 or whatnot. Then tells the wardrobe people, and the wardrobe people will contact like the prop houses and stuff like that, and then they'll ask the prop houses, and the prop houses will kind of like put it together. Sometimes the pipeline or the route is a little different. Like on the Ghost Recon commercial, I was working with them, and they were like, we want to basically tell this story. And I was like, okay, so if he's like a colonel here in this timeline, that means depending on how early you want to start telling his story, he's going to be a certain rank. And if this is like coinciding with the world that we live in, then the uniforms will be different, the camo will be different. So we basically kind of work backwards. So like he's supposed to be like John Bernthal's character is supposed to be like a colonel in this Ghost Recon commercial at the end. So we basically, if we went back to a certain time when he was kind of fresh, they basically kind of show him like right at the beginning of his career, which means he's wearing BDU's regular M81 Woodland combat uniform. And then you kind of see the progression. You see him a little bit in like the GWAT, Iraq, Afghanistan war, and then it kind of comes a little bit more contemporary. So that was definitely story driven. And so I had to basically look and see like what they wanted to do, like what time period that they were looking at. And that could basically fill in the gaps from there. So it's like basically working backwards and whatnot. But yeah, that's how essentially I worked that one. Pick the right weapons, pick the right gear. There was a little bit of a concession with the knee pads because the stunt guys had to have knee pads and they didn't pick the right ones, but at least they blended in well enough in the uniform and the characters are running across the screen so fast you basically don't see them. So there's always stuff like that, that you might have to make concessions with. Because I had to talk to the director about that. I was like, hey, those knee pads are right. It's like, he's like, well, the stunt guys need the pads. Like, okay, well, at least it blends in, so I can work with that. So
bro, yeah, this is amazing, and there's so much that goes into it because you see some of these movies that get it really wrong, and I would imagine when you talk to some of these people, you're showing them this is what you don't want, right? Like you're going through that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's their decision. Like, as a technical advisor, you can tell them what the right way is, or you can try to find a way to have a little bit of a compromise. And a lot of that sometimes comes, if it's action-oriented, it goes through, like, the stunt coordinator. But, yeah, ultimately, it's their decision whether to take it or leave it. So that's why sometimes things make it through that aren't necessarily correct. But, like, they might be close, or they might just be completely wrong, but it's just, director, producer's call, or whatever. But on the second Ghost Recon commercial that I did, it was cool because I was working with the 8711 and the Avengers, like, stunt guys. Like, I mean, the stunt community is really small, but it was like all the dudes who'd worked on John Wick and like all the big movies, like Suicide Squad and like the Avengers and everything. Well, everyone worked on the Avengers, like so many of them. But yeah, it was cool to work with them because Greg Rementer is the stunt coordinator on that shoot, and he was the second unit director for Hobbs and Shaw. So he's kind of like David Leitch's like right hand man, or like kind of like Boba Fett to Darth Vader. Like he's kind of an up and coming guy, and I could totally see Greg Rementer eventually like directing and producing like his own thing.
Right.
But that was cool because, for example, right. So here's one of the scenarios. You have this guy. I mean, they're all based on video game characters, so the characters are all kind of gamey, anyways. But he's got this bolt action sniper rifle, and then he's got a SIG MPX subgun. And there's a scenario in the commercial, if you watch it, where they go into a building, close quarters, and he's trying to use the sniper rifle as like a bow staff. I can't remember. I think he still uses it for fighting a little bit. But I was like, hey, Greg, he has this close quarters like submachine gun on him. Can he like use that more instead of trying to use the sniper rifle? Like, we got him with the sub gun, but he hasn't really used the sub gun at all. Would be nice if he uses it because it makes sense for the scenario. So we changed it up, and obviously the action is very it's very John Wick like because that's the 8711 guys
right.
who design all those kinds of fight scenes. But it was cool because he ended up like changing that at the last minute, and I was like, oh, thank God. Okay, at least there's a shot of him using the submachine gun inside because that's what you would use. You wouldn't use the bolt gun inside. So stuff like that. That was like an interesting conversation, but that's where like compromises were made, and I think it ended up looking pretty entertaining.
I have to ask, when you look out there, movies are doing much better job getting it right, and I think we saw that, in John Wick and movies like Heat. Certain movies through the years have done a great job. One of my favorites is Collateral. Really love it. What are some movies on your list? Because I was talking to Jack Carr about this, movies that did well from the book to the movie. What do you see out there in that space? A few movies through, not that you've worked on, but just in general that really got it right, and ones that you feel really missed in terms of incorporating the right gear, the right everything within the realm of possibility.
Oh man, like Black Hawk Down is really good. I've studied the crap out of that because I built my own Gothic Serpent kit, my own Delta Force Gothic Serpent kit that Surefire actually used for the 40th anniversary display at SHOT Show, which was cool because that means like dudes who were there were going to see that kit on display at their booth. So I put that together kind of for Airsoft and Milsim, but I try to get as accurate as I could because the movie kits are actually a little bit different, but they're basically like a soft impression of what the Delta guys were wearing. The Ranger kits were like spot on. Part of the reason why the Delta kits weren't exact is some of the stuff just wasn't readily available. But overall, like that is probably one of the best like recreations from authenticity standpoint, just because the amount of tech advisors you had on there and location, and you had 160th store involved, and you had actual Rangers fast roping in those scenes, and just like all that stuff in between, the weapons and everything. They did a really, really good job. Black Hawk Down's like probably easily like top of my list. The one that people might not think about a lot is also like Last of the Mohicans as like a period piece. I mean, they had like done studies and research, and like, and it really depends on how, and that's another Michael Mann film too. So that's like, Heat, Last of the Mohicans, so you can see the parallel there. Guys like Michael Mann and directors and stuff like that, it kind of really depends how obsessed they are with authenticity or with the very certain feel and tone of the film and how that all plays together. But in like, for example, I spent like a whole day watching like the making of The Last of the Mohicans, and there's a part where they talk about, they were like, there's no way a guy can be running and load a black powder rifle. And then they found a real guy who could do it, and they were training Daniel Day-Lewis to basically do that. So it's amazing, like the levels and extent they'll go for training people for film. I'm trying to think of a couple other really good ones. I mean, everyone's going to talk about John Wick for gun stuff. Movies that have done it bad. There's so many to list. I mean, you could basically go on Netflix and find a lot of movies that get it wrong. Trying to think of like a really big
anything
movie
starring Steven Seagal.
Basically. Yeah, I mean, man, there's so much. I mean, obviously from a film and from a TV standpoint, SEAL Team is like at the very top, because the amount of writers and tech advisors you have on that is like ridiculous. Trying to think what's some other good movies that it's funny because I'm usually a big movie guy. I'm trying to think. There's gotta be, too bad there's not that many good GWAT movies.
It's funny for me because I'll give you the best and worst. I think John Wick did an amazing job. I think the third one was ridiculous. I think it was too over the top. I'm like, because you know what it is. I mean, look, we've all been on ranges, and it's just like some of that stuff. It's like, okay, this is really cool, like with the dogs, but is this like, how practical is this? You know what I mean? It just gets a little crazy.
It does get crazy, although it's like, I guess the best person to ask would probably be Melnick, because he's a canine guy. So he'd be able to probably tell you like how, like, if that's really how it would end up being or whatnot. Because I'm not a canine guy, but the one, because like one guy I did talk to, he's like an Australian SAS guy, and he was just talking about like they were clearing some houses in Afghanistan, and then they blasted some dude, and the dog just threw like the dog ran up, bit the guy, and the guy got blasted, and the dog is still like tugging at the guy's body. So like there's like elements of like what happens in John Wick are probably pretty realistic. I've never seen anyone use canines like that before, but who knows?
Yeah, you have to believe
we're out of my wheelhouse.
It's a little bit of movie magic, right? So you have to go into it with that. But at the same time, sometimes I'm like, come on, like, this is a little ridiculous. The first John Wick was so great because it had a good
more grounded.
sense.
It's definitely more grounded. Yeah.
It just had a sense of realism built into it, and I think you could suspend a certain amount of disbelief and you'd be willing to do it. And I think, some movies jump the shark,
I think that really comes down to like, it's like, once you do the first one, where do you go from there? Same thing, because then it'll be too repetitive. I mean, it's going to get repetitive regardless, but so I'm pretty sure it was like the stunt coordinators and the directors, they're like, okay, how do we make this crazier, bigger, and more badass? Which is exactly what happened. But I mean, it's definitely entertaining. It's definitely more at the point where it's more entertaining than it is like realistic. But I do enjoy the groundedness of the first one. But yeah, the third one was crazy. The sword fight on the motorbikes and everything. They're just doing all kinds of crazy stuff. But I'm pretty sure the stunt guys who worked on that had a blast.
It's amazing. It's amazing how they do it. It's amazing.
No, yeah.
It's just like, and you wonder like how many of those guys end up on the scrap heap beat up, you know what I mean? And how they're able to do it within a degree of safety, because some of the stunts are amazing. I mean, they really are.
Well, they're padding up and they're doing wire work, and I mean, all the stunts have safety. Like before you even do a shoot, if there's any kind of safety issues, you'll have like a safety briefing, and they'll be padded up. There'll be pads on the ground. I mean, it's like even in like Mission Impossible. So when they were doing the fight in the bathroom, if you look closely, the tile on the ground is actually padded but it looks like tile. So when guys are like flying around in one of the Mission Possible movies, maybe it was the last one, the Fallout one, there's pads on the ground. There's pads everywhere that are just like hidden. And sometimes they just have to CG or paint out the pads too. So there's all kinds of really crazy tricks they have for getting around that. But their job is still inherently dangerous. It just depends on the stunt itself. And sometimes it's what you see is what you get. There's no wires. There's no nothing.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. And it's when you go. I gotta ask, like when you go home to your family and you say, "This is what I'm gonna do." Like, did they say like you're crazy?
Well, it's really just my mom at home. So she's always just wondering what I'm doing. But no, she just has She's happy that I'm busy, that I'm working, doing something I love. Yeah,
she was cool with it. Like it's like,
okay. Well, I mean, like when I told her when I was 19 that I was going to join the Army for 6 years and jump out of planes, that's kind of hard for to top that.
I would imagine.
She was not happy about that.
It's a wild ride, but when I see guys like you and I see you make opportunity out of something that maybe there was an opportunity before, you know what I mean? And you're paving a path that's not a common path. It makes me believe that you're, just an out of the box thinker to begin with, that has to come from somewhere. And it's always interesting to me when Mill or Leo guys and folks go ahead and do that because you come from such a regimented background. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, very structured and very structured. And then come out and then now the creativity kind of just takes its own life.
Is it just because like you say to yourself, I don't want to wait in line and be told when to eat anymore and I just want to do my thing?
Well, I just, it's odd because I enjoyed the military, but like a regular 9-to-5 job really isn't my style. I don't know. I just have, I'm not like the most adventurous person out there, but I just kind of like the adventure of like going on location and shooting on set or working on a video game or working on a film or even just doing my own projects or even doing the Airsoft Milsim thing where you're just shooting at other players from helicopters and stuff. So for me, I just want to have fun. So, and I think part of it too is like, I just like, even when I was in the military, I was doing some stuff. I always had like a creative side, like really big creative side, because I started the YouTube when I was in the military. So I was making my own little like shorts and own little YouTube videos and everything. And so I always had that need to do something creative and have a creative outlet. Like one thing that I did a couple years ago was I made a Jurassic fan film. And it had like a bunch of gun industry guys in it, like Travis Haley, Grantham, True Exodus and stuff in it. And we shot in Hawaii. We shot in 7 days. It was 1 day at Haley Strategic, 1 day in LA, and 5 days in Hawaii. Wow. And so that was just a fan film. But we were like, hey, I thought it was funny at the time because it was like, I had made like another Jurassic World fan film before that was kind of super, super low budget. It was really cheesy, but I was like, what's the next craziest thing I could do? Oh, we can do the same thing. We could do it in Hawaii. And of course, sort of a logistical nightmare, but it really gave me a much better idea of like what it takes, all the pieces of the puzzle to make something. Because you never learn, well, you can kind of learn how something's made, but until you actually make it, you don't fully understand like the depth and like the commitment and just all the crazy things and pieces of the puzzle really takes to make something.
Yeah, so, the gun industry is way behind in terms of understanding what goes into content creation and what goes into actually creating content. You talk to some of these companies and they don't fully understand it yet. They're getting better. They've gotten a lot better, right? Mm-hmm. They've gotten so much better. But in the beginning, it was like, oh yeah, we'll give you a muzzle brake and go do a video, and we're like, huh? Like, what? It was bad in the beginning, and I don't know if you encountered some of that, but early on, in the business, it was very tough to get companies because you're coming from a manufacturing background, a lot of these brands. Mm-hmm. And
I think as social media has evolved, they've all gotten younger and more capable people working their social media and marketing departments who kind of understand that world better. Like that they've been, because they kind of, either they've been doing it themselves or whatever, and they kind of picked up on it. So I think that's part of the reason why it's gotten better is companies themselves had to make their own videos, and the combination of like just the people that they're getting to do that stuff has got a little bit better understanding of it. So I think overall, the gun industry has definitely gotten better for sure.
It's funny how it's evolved in my time, because it's gone from the old ad buyers and writers running all the marketing departments to the photographers to now you see video guys. But I said to someone, I said, if you want to get ahead of the curve, you have to start to get YouTube creators involved. You have to get like a good young creator. And that's really, who should be the tip of your spear involved, because the gun industry is very slow to go to places. Like right now, they're very Instagram centric. They're fixated on Instagram. And I've been preaching to a lot of them for a long time. You need to be looking at YouTube aggressively. You need to be looking at podcasting. You need to be looking at apps. Like I look at stuff that like John Lovell's doing at Warrior Poet Society.
Oh, yeah, he just launched his app.
And I said to him, if you go read the comments under the day, I said, why are we always ahead of everybody else? Like, it's like no company, like if Glock launched an app tomorrow and had like a streaming content on there, everything, they would decimate the market. If SIG did it, they'd decimate the market. It's that slowness to go in the direction that we all know it's going, right? Like we all know it's getting there. We go to CES, we go to NAB, we know it's going there. It's like, it's like, why won't a company just get there already? But like you said, you have to get younger, more capable. You have to get more qualified people in the right positions that understand the evolution of the marketplace and what's going to come and what's coming. And now, with the COVID thing, you got, what is it? Some people say 3, some people say 7 million new gun owners out there. It's going to evolve. It has to evolve, because people are going to start to say, well, what do you mean I can't go? There's not an app. You know what I mean? So it just has to evolve, and it has to go mainstream. But that reluctance by a lot of brands to embrace those directions is very difficult. Movies have always been there, and technical advising in movies has been there forever. Like you brought up Dale Dye, and you brought up some of the legends of the business. And that's not going to go anywhere. It's like, when do all of these merge and collide? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think one thing I noticed, like the gun industry kind of everyone kind of lives in their own little world. The gun industry kind of lives in its own little world. But whether they look at, I guess for training, they should be looking at like what athletes are doing for like content creation or technology. They could be going to CES and stuff and seeing what that whole side's doing. But the gun industry is like, we live in our little bubble, but to really kind of see big picture where things are going physically and digitally, like that's what people need to look at. I think that's one of the reasons why I like Travis so much, because he looks at what athletes are doing and how they're training, and he's like, oh wow, we're like, the gun industry is not training that way or not thinking that way. And like, because obviously it's so competitive in the athletic space that they're always looking at ways to make the human body work better. But like we're not. But what's weird that in the shooting side that we're not really looking at that much. We're still looking at like the shooting and the training side, but not looking at not looking at the physical capability. The stuff that basically pro athletes go through to become better at what they do, and how can we apply that to our shooting and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, I just had the hitting instructor from the Yankees, the girl on. She spent 20 minutes talking about breathing and biometrics, and how, she could have taught a seminar on just breathing and how breathing works. Now, you're absolutely right. And for a long time, putting the fitness component and the training component in, it's something that Pat McNamara has done for a long time. I had been a part of, Tony Sentman out at Real World Tactical had been a part of, putting a lot of those components together into the shooting world. And you have some people out there that, like you look at JJ Racaza and the emphasis on movement, and you look at, even some of the training Max is doing. You have to understand that the evolution of shooting and shooting sports, the days of, I've said it 100 times, the days of the dusty buckle and boot NRA guy getting out of a truck and having the belly hang, those are over. They're over. Yeah. I mean, you can't get away. It's just, Greg, it's over. I mean, you have to be, you look at Pat, he sets a huge standard for older guys.
Pat McNamara's got like an 8-pack, he's like 50-something.
Yeah, it's great. And you love seeing that because it gives you hope, right? And he'll tell you, he doesn't have the best diet, he doesn't have the best, but you have to train. And, the movement towards jiu-jitsu coming in and judo and some of the different things, the bar gets raised very aggressively every year. And, I try to look at guys. I talked to a group Actually, they'll remain nameless, but I talked to a group of older guys in one big group agency, whatever you want to call it. And I said, you guys are the minority, the ham sandwich guys making the decision. You're going to be the minority. In 5 years, you guys are going to be, people are going to look at you like, do you even run? So you have to start to gravitate towards that. Now, training and the evolution of body biomechanics, how people train, how we incorporate that in realism and incorporating that into movies, that's something that's going to be forever the chase. When does it start being a movie and stop being realistic, right? So there's so many things to consider. And then in your real life training, as you know, you want to mimic as many real life conditions as you can. And that's why when you go on a range, you can tell, and so can I, in 5 minutes, if the instructor is creating a course that's real world applicable, how that course is going to operate, how that's going to function. And that's going to continue to change the landscape out there for a long time to come. But I can remember the business when I first got in it, about 10 years ago, let's call it. And the way people trained, it was a fat guy's game, to be, to be honest. It was, it still was coming out of those trenches a little bit, but it's grown, and I'm happy to say that it's grown, and guys like you being a part of it are going to be huge, and creating the realism in movies. But I think it's so much fun to see a guy like you doing something you love in the business, being a veteran, being able to come out and turn the switch and get into a career and a path that you love. What was your secret mentally to kind of just move on and put that part of your life behind you and move forward?
For me, it was not it didn't happen super fast right away. Like a lot of the major tech advising developments kind of happened within the last 2-3 years. And I'd been in LA for overall for 6. So the first couple of years were kind of just me kind of getting my feet wet, kind of figuring LA out and meeting people and stuff like that. But what it really is, it really was the networking and stuff. And once you get the hook, once you get 1 or 2 gigs, it just kind of seemed to snowball after that. There's more things, because I would start meeting people from those productions, and then they'd be like, hey, we've got a project going on. And then they'd be like, hey, can you work on this? So yeah, one project would lead to 2, maybe 3 more or whatever, or potentials or whatever. Because sometimes you get a call back, sometimes you don't. But that's kind of how that evolves really fast. And sometimes it takes a couple weeks or maybe a couple months between major projects and whatnot. But for example, when I worked on the Ghost Recon commercial, the Greg Rementer was like, hey, there's a chance we might hit you up in case, because we're shooting this thing in December or whatever. So it's really just how it happens, really. Who you meet, and if they like you, if they think that you have skills that are applicable to what they need, they'll hit you up, and it just kind of butterfly effects from there.
Who are some of your favorite brands to work with?
Oh man, I love Surefire, Haley Strategic for sure. Travis Haley was a hero of mine growing up, and he's always been a mentor. He's been very pro airsoft too. So there's him. I love Tyler Gray because the work that he's done on the film and TV side. Trying to think.
What companies? I know Haley has Haley Strategic. Yeah. What brands, when you go out and you look at the marketplace, what brands do you like to work with?
Let me see.
Who have been fun and easy?
Oh man, Surefire was fun. They were pretty straightforward too. They took me out to a class for using their new Scoutlight Pros and stuff, and that was kind of fun because it was a marketing event, but it wasn't here's the light, here's how you use it, blah blah blah. It was a multiple days of shooting suppressed weapons and doing concealed carry classes and stuff, and then doing force on force with that. So yeah, Surefire is definitely really good. Trying to think, because most of the other companies are on the airsoft side, but one of the companies that I really like is a PTS company that I kind of helped build the last couple of years, but I've gotten to do so much fun stuff through PTS. PTS is really kind of the linchpin that's kind of given me a lot of opportunity to do stuff because there's a lot of flexibility and freedom. But through them, I've gotten to do shooting from helicopters. I've gotten to travel all across the country and go to millions of events. And I'm trying to think, the coolest event I went to is probably the one when we're fighting in the desert, doing desert warfare. That one was a lot of fun. I mean, and I think one of the companies that I'm probably going to start working with too is Night Vision Inc.
Mm-hmm.
I've been talking to those guys. Like, so with the world of night vision, like all the companies more or less have like lead times, but Night Vision Inc. is really cool because they have a lot of their stuff in stock, or usually they can build it really fast, and they've got a really good like QC process and whatnot too. So if people are looking for like night vision, that's like one of the key components for like things probably people should be looking at right now. Definitely hit those guys up. Those guys are really cool, really, really nice and chill to work with. LBT is also another company that has supported me for a long time. It's funny how I met them because I remember meeting Alex Milner, who's the marketing guy at LBT.
Yeah, great guy.
I met him through Tyler and the guys at Medal of Honor Warfighter. When Tyler Gray was working on Medal of Honor Warfighter, it was funny. I was at E3, which is like the video game version of SHOT Show or CES. And I was at the Medal of Honor booth, and there's Kevin Vance, and there's Tyler Gray, and then here comes Alex from LBT showing up green, like he's brand new to LBT, and met him, been friends with him ever since. So he's always been great, helped supply gear and whatnot, and a lot of the gear they made was also very, they built an entire line for the consumer side, the LBX line for consumers, which worked for great for people if they just want to go shooting or for airsoft and whatnot. It was like the more affordable, non-very compliant LBT, because regular LBT is just, it's expensive. It's made for contracts and stuff. So, and I'd been by the LBT facility a bunch of times, and the owner of the company is really cool, and he's got like a whole collection of cannons in his office. So LBT is another really, really good one. Let's see, I'm trying to think of like other companies. Like I've worked with a lot over the years, but not in like a capacity where I'm like going to visit them so much. So, but, yeah, Halo Strategic would probably be the top one because I go and see those guys all the time.
Yeah, he's got some awesome stuff. I think I have one of his original small backpacks. I loved it. It was like the perfect size.
Flat pack.
Yeah, the flat pack.
Yeah,
it was like the perfect size.
I personally like the bigger one, the Flat Pack Plus, because it's a little more versatile. It's got Velcro lining, and obviously both flat packs expand. But I like the full peel open design because then you can put clothes in it, you can put medical supplies in it, you can put all the stuff in it, and it stays organized. The regular flat pack is more of a stuff it kind of design, like so basically just open it and just throw stuff in it, and it doesn't have a full peel, so it's kind of like an assaulter's kind of setup.
It's no frills.
Yeah, but I prefer the flat pack plus for like travel and stuff. It's a great bag, but as far as brands goes, that's kind of it for me. Okay, M-Tech is also another good one. M-Tech is a helmet company that came out with essentially what was a single shell Cry airframe. They basically solved the problem that Cry couldn't solve and made this helmet that's got really great coverage. I mean, all of the helmet market's weird right now because all the helmets, non-ballistic and ballistic, the prices just keep going up. But I just think it's funny. And also the company that I work for now also has the license to make the M-Tech helmet. So we're making the airsoft replicas as well that people can use as like, just if they just want to throw night vision on for like a night vision shooting match, they can do that too and not have to spend like $1,000 on a helmet. It's like only like $130. But M-Tech has been great. The guy over there who I talked to, who's like one of their main designers, he was like an OIF invasion Marine. So I became friends with him. He's a super chill guy. He actually helped out with Jurassic World Exodus too. He sent like 6 helmets over for us to use and borrow and sent those back. But that guy's been super supportive. It's a super small company. They're not huge like Gentex or OpsCore or anything, but those guys do some really cool, innovative stuff. And their helmet's fantastic. I absolutely love it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many great brands out there. You just look out into the landscape, and there's so many. When you go to SHOT Show, it's hard to explain to people listening that haven't been. There's these little like jewel companies hidden.
Oh yeah, in the basement. You never know what you're going to find down there.
And down some of those little caravans, you'll come across a brand, and I know you know this because you do a little bit of scout work walking around, and you're kind of like, oh man, like they make some cool stuff, and there's little reasons as to why they haven't caught on and so on, but you find some gems. And then of course there's always, everybody with a pouch has a, something, but there's a lot of really cool brands out there that are hidden in some of these little enclaves. So you get the opportunity to kind of peruse around, check them out. And if you ever get the chance to really walk around SHOT Show without an agenda, that's when you find a lot of them. And that's the hardest part, you know?
The last couple of years I've been working the booth, and I only had like a day and maybe a little bit extra
not
to
enough
like
time.
Walk around. Yeah, not enough time. So it's basically run through, say hi to my friends, people that I know, and a couple of meetings that I have, and then hopefully see something cool on the way there.
It's so hard.
It's an ocean of people and things. But I really enjoy it. And, you know, as cool as what all the big companies obviously they put cool stuff out there. But yeah, you go in the basement, it's just like, it's like Russian roulette. You never know what you're going to find. And you're going to find that one cool thing, or like whether it's like, I checked out the tactical walls guys, and I got one of their little wall organizer panels, and like, it's kind of a cool way to like display your guns, but also keep it organized. And then, there was, I think was it Seahorse cases in that, like years ago. Those guys have always been pretty supportive. I like their case because it's like, it has like built-in locks, and then like that you can get, and like the latches with built-in locks, and like the latch rotates too. So unlike a Pelican where the Pelican just closes down, and it can like accidentally open, the one on the Seahorse like closes all the way, and then it like rotate locks too. So it's like two ways that things stay secure. And those people have been great to work with, but they're always coming out with cool stuff. And like most companies, they came from like an aquatic background where they're working with like scuba tanks and stuff. So it's cool gems at SHOT Show. You never know what you're going to find.
So, you know, I would think, you know, I want to get into gaming for a second. You know, everybody's been outspoken about gaming being a bullish thing, a place to be, you know, and people are making money in gaming. I mean, it's huge. I mean, it's overtaking the film industry, really. You know, I want to ask you, and I want to get your thoughts. How do you see now this playing out post-COVID, where people are now being able to watch movies that they watched, you know, at home, or
movies that would normally be in the theater, but now it's like at home and stuff like that. So people are basically being conditioned. Like, there is still something romantic and really cool about watching a movie in the theater. So it's like that experience is still really awesome. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. You know, there's like now all these companies are like there's more streaming services now, and like more high profile streaming services like Disney Plus and stuff now. So it'll be interesting to see how that shapes up, because like there's a lot of companies that either they just put, I think Onward from Pixar is now on demand, that you can watch that now too. And some companies have decided to stick with the theater, and some of them are putting content out like that. And then on the gaming side, man, Call of Duty's killing it right now. Of course, they put out their new game mode that's got like 150 players. It's like they're destroying Battlefield right now. And like companies are doing like double XP events and stuff. Like, this is like, for gamers, this is like the best time to be alive, because you just have to stay home and play games all day. And all the companies are still putting out like content and patches, updates, and like free stuff, and like different reasons to play, really. So the only downside is maybe some of the development for long term for some games is kind of put on the back burner. But other than that, it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I also thought, I saw an article that the World Health Organization was like, gaming is a problem, and now they're telling people to stay home and play video games.
Do you think that'll continue? That trend will continue?
Just for how long the shutdown will be, and like how long people will be stuck at home, or just.
I don't know. I guess what I'm getting at is, you know, are theaters necessary anymore?
You know, I still think they have a place, but they potentially could be going the way of the dodo. I mean, like, there still are drive-in movie theaters, which oddly enough, some people have been using because of the whole COVID thing. But potentially, like, they could be downscaling, because I heard AMC might be having some issues, because, you know, you have like a whole month where like people haven't been able to go see movies in the theater. So, I mean, it hasn't even been a month since LA shut down. Like, I think it was like March 19th when they initiated it. It's only the 7th, and there's still like 10 more days before it's a month. So, and, you know, I can only imagine how much business AMC is losing, because they're not playing movies, and two, no one's buying any of their food. So, it depending on how long it goes on for, it could cripple the actual movie theater industry, because people actually have to go to those. But it's kind of hard to tell. But who knows? It could bounce back, or it could just have some really long lasting effects.
Yeah, because you see a lot of guys going straight to Netflix, and I mean, but coming back to the video games, I mean, I'm definitely bullish on them, and I'm a believer now. And it's in that Twitch space and just what so many guys are doing. Can the average person jump in and make a living doing that?
Doing that, with how many streamers there are now, I would say totally. They would just have to have the right personality and just enough creativity and skill and knowledge using the tools, the editing, and the software and stuff. And if they're personable enough, and if they're gaming, I mean, they don't even have to really be that good. They just have to be good enough so it's entertaining to watch. And if they are good, then even better. Because I know a bunch of YouTubers. I mean, there's a lot of them. So I would actually say, like, if someone was consistent and they knew they had a pretty good idea what they're doing and they had a likable personality, and they could totally do it. It takes a little work on the getting a stream set up and everything, but yeah, that's totally doable. That's a lot easier than kind of like coming up in like the gun industry or the film industry or whatnot. This is something that anyone at home can really do, and it's just really just on them as from their personality wise if people will like them or not.
Yeah, it's crazy because it seems like it would be like such an easy job to do, and it feels like so many people would want to jump in, but people don't realize it's kind of like content creation. It's so
totally it is and it isn't. It's like it's a great job, but at the same time you're married to the chair.
Married to the chair. Yeah. So it's like, I thought about doing for me, I'll like stream like occasionally for fun and whatnot. And like the idea of streaming and playing video games and getting paid to do it's nice. Man, I do like going outside. So it's like, because these streamers have schedules, and like in order to get big, you have to be streaming like every day. Yeah. So like, just imagine every day you're tied to that chair, and like, it's a blessing at first, but probably becomes more of a curse over time. And it's no different than if you're editing or if you're like creating content and you're just married to this editing software and just looking at the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. It's like podcasting. People want to get in the space, and I tell them all the time, you have to have a schedule. You have to stick to the schedule. You have to constantly put content out there because you're going to lose people.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely becomes work for sure. So it's people can do it at home, but they kind of look at it with like rose-colored glasses, where they look at just the fun side and not realizing how much work goes in on the back end. But for some people, it works out really well for them. It's create a good career and it's create a good lifestyle for them. It can definitely be lucrative. It just kind of depends on the person that you are too. Like for me, like I still like going out and doing stuff. Like as much as I love my gaming computer and as much as I love gaming, and I play a lot of video games, I do love going out and doing stuff. So kind of being tied to the chair is like not my favorite thing in the world. It's kind of a side effect of being creative. I have to be married to the chair a little while to do my creative stuff. But other than that, I like going out and doing things.
I think post-COVID though, Greg, a lot of people are going to be looking at a home, something they can do at home that generates a little revenue.
True. Yeah. I mean, this is unprecedented. I mean, you've been around longer than I have, so you can probably tell me even more so. But I mean, even younger people now. Like there's a girl that I was talking to, and we were like, man, I wonder if we're going to be telling people about this like 20, 30 years from now, because of how big of an impact this is making.
The closest this comes to is probably 9/11 in my lifetime. I would safely say the country was essentially shut down for almost 10 days roughly. It wasn't.
It was like travel shut down. Yeah. It wasn't like full economic shutdown. Like this is like full on. Like there's like, well, there is a little bit of travel going on, but no one is traveling. And then now there's like border restrictions in some places. They're like chasing people in New York. Like
it's gonna.
Like, hey, are you from New York? So I'm like, oh man, this is good. This is basically like The Division. I don't know if you're familiar with the Division video game, but the Division video game is kind of like a modern Tom Clancy post-apocalyptic kind of thing, where it's like everyone's running around with weapons, and it's kind of like Mad Max-ish, but not so not so edgy.
Yeah, it's going to take a while before people get back to normal, and I think you're going to see a lot of people look for that home job or that home way to generate income. And there's a lot of different ways to do it, and people are going to work differently. And to say they're going to work smarter is a stretch, but I think they're going to work very differently. And I think streaming and bandwidth, it's going to take up a lot of people's time.
That's the thing. If this goes on long enough, people are going to get acclimated to doing stuff at home. Some people will be just dying to get outside, and they'll just go crazy, doing everything they can outside. So it'll be like one of the two.
Well,
interestingly enough, too, like for firearms guys, one thing that I've been kind of pushing lately is that depending on where you are, some people, if you live in the backwoods, you can go shoot wherever. But if you live in the city or whatever, a lot of people can't go to the range. So one thing that I've been doing is if people if they have a backyard of some kind, that I've been pushing people, you can use airsoft to train at home. I know, I was I forgot what day it was, but I was on Instagram talking to a bunch of other gun guys, and sure enough, all these gun guys, high profile or not high profile, doesn't matter how big they were or how small they were, they started picking up airsoft guns and started training at home because they have that itch to go train and they can't go shoot. So it was kind of an interesting time. Even
it was funny. Michelle Viscuzzi just posted a video and everybody thought she was shooting live rounds in her backyard.
Was she shooting? She's shooting an airsoft gun?
Yeah, she's shooting an airsoft Glock, and everybody was like, "Oh, you're shooting!" And she goes, "It's airsoft, dudes. It's airsoft."
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because it's totally you can do it in your garage and whatnot. It's a safe, easy way to train, and if you don't have that much space, it's fantastic. So that's one thing that I've been pushing right now because I know people want to train, and there's a couple airsoft companies still fulfilling orders and stuff. So yeah, people are looking to do some firearms training at home. Especially if they're a new gun owner. If you're a new gun owner now, the chances are you probably can't get to a range and actually practice the thing that you should be practicing for. No better time to have the airsoft gun and just, work some basic fundamentals and drawing from concealment and whatnot. And they can get as crazy as they want and not have to worry about hurting anybody.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it's amazing stuff. Greg, I can't thank you enough for taking the time and coming on. It's been, so insightful into an area that I'm not tremendously well versed in, and I can't thank you enough for taking the time. Believe it or not, it's been an hour. Yeah.
Appreciate you for having me, man. It's always great to talk about the things that I do and whatnot, and kind of educate people on what's going on in the world and what's going on with the gun side, or give people insight to the film and television industry, because that's not an industry everyone gets to look into. And for me, coming into it, that was a lot of fun. That's a really great journey.
To let everybody know where they can find you on IG and all the different spaces so they can look you up.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So, super easy to find me. It's Spartan117GW. It's basically the same handle for everything: YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. The only different one is Twitter. There's just an 82 at the end. But yeah, Spartan117GW. If you Google me, you'll find me instantly.
Now, I know you can't get into it, but maybe we'll have you on again when you can talk about a big project or something you might be working on or something you might be wrapping up. Can you give everybody a taste of something you're working on right now that hasn't hit theaters?
Let's see. There was something I did work on this past fall. Big project. I'm not a big player in that project, but it was I'd always wanted to be in a movie of that scale, and I got to do it. So it was that's going to be really cool. That was, the only thing that would have been cooler or better if I was in Black Hawk Down or something. But I mean, this was there's on that level. There's hundreds of extras running around. So, oh my God. Yeah. That's going to be cool. There's some cool stuff coming out. I don't know if it's going to be delayed or not, because I haven't heard any word on the film being delayed, but, yeah, and there's some cool stuff coming up. And then I also got another smaller, fan film project that I'm working on. Hopefully that still ends up going through, and I think it's June. So, that one's a follow-up to, SCP Dollhouse. It's a little independent YouTube channel. He does a lot of Call of Duty videos and stuff like that, but just collaborating with him and a couple other YouTubers. I think Grand Thumb is going to be in on that too. So yeah, just got a couple things in the pipeline.
Well, that's pretty amazing. So I'm looking forward to it, and I can't thank you enough for taking the time, and I'll make sure I put a couple of your links down below so everyone can check you out and check out what you have going on. But we'll have to do this again after some of these projects come to theater and talk about them. Appreciate it. Yeah, absolutely would love to. All right, brother. We're out. Cool.
Cool.